Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give our colleagues a few minutes to come on in to the National Folk Festival Host City webinar. If you're here early, I wanted you to know that we'll be taking questions through the Q&A, but you won't have the chance to unmute or join the conversation in this webinar. We're going to be sharing out a lot of information, and those who have specific questions, we would be happy to speak with you offline. We also have the treat while we wait for our arrivals. We're going to watch a short video. Many of you may have seen it before, but that will only last a few moments. So we will be able to share some specific information. I see we already have 20 people here. It's great to see everyone. People calling in from across the country. Some of our colleagues from the National Park Service, some of our colleagues who have been involved in the events in different ways over the years. Some new names in here too. We're glad to see you all. So I'm Laura Bottinelli. I'm the Executive Director of the National Council for the Traditional Arts, and we are at the Host City applicant webinar. I wanted to start this session sharing our recruitment video, which brings you right up to the sights and sounds of the National. It's only about a minute long, and then we'll come back and we'll dig into some of the aspects of the application process.
The National Folk Festival is looking for its next host city. Imagine transforming your city into a vibrant celebration of music, dance, and art from across America that can bring 100,000 eventgoers and generate tens of millions in economic impact. For 3 years, the nation's longest-running traditional arts event, the National Folk Festival, can take root in the heart of your community. See your city streets flourish with an art celebration that has been a successful catalyst for urban renewal and revitalization efforts in the communities it has touched across the country. The National Folk Festival is a free, large-scale 3-day outdoor event that celebrates the roots, richness, and variety of American culture. It features over 350 of the nation's finest traditional musicians, dancers, craftspeople, and other keepers of culture in performances. It also includes workshops and demonstrations, plus children's activities, savory regional and ethnic cuisines, participatory dancing, storytelling, parades, and more. Share the richness of your local culture and expose your community to cultural traditions they might never have the opportunity to experience. Through its partnership with the host city, the National Folk Festival is an economic and cultural powerhouse that unites communities in renewing civic pride, strengthening community collaborations, and spurring investments in community infrastructure. Residents, civic leaders, funders, and festival visitors alike will be enticed to explore other opportunities with the host city by this powerful, transformative, and collaborative community celebration. The application to be the next host city for the National Folk Festival is open. Share your vision with us for bringing America's premier celebration of traditional arts and culture to your community.
I have a few of our colleagues here. They will put the link to that video in the chat. It's been up on our YouTube page. Many of you have seen it. Maybe some of you are pictured in the many images that are brought to us from that experience. But right now we can switch over to our plans for the day to be able to give a little glimpse inside the recruitment process for the National Folk Festival. And as you can see, we are looking for host cities for 2023 to 2025. The National Folk Festival is brought to you by the National Council for the Traditional Arts, whom I'm the director of, and you have many colleagues and partners that have worked with the National Council for the Traditional Arts over the years, as we are the oldest running folk and traditional arts organization in the country, operating since 1933. And our programs celebrate and honor deeply rooted cultural expressions from music, dance, crafts, rituals, stories passed through time and families, communities in tribal, ethnic, regional, and occupational groups. If you've experienced any part of the NCTA's work, you can see that the broad background of the United States and the people who live here are brought to life through our programs. Our most notable program is the National Folk Festival, which started in 1934, the year after the founding of the organization that sponsors it. And so this mission of the National Folk Festival to bring together these deeply rooted cultural expressions and to highlight some of the finest traditional artists and tradition bearers working throughout the country now through these festivals has been the mission of these events, as it has carried through 80 years in partnership with communities across the country. At any National Folk Festival, you get a cross section of the country and the vibrant cultural expressions that come from the working communities that celebrate and pass down traditions. And you may see anything from blues to bluegrass, rockabilly, gospel, Cajun, klezmer, cowboy poetry, Native American expressions, and on at any one national. The National has also traveled around the country. We've been to over 30 communities in these 80 years, taking us across the country during different times in the nation and the way in which it worked with and engaged with cultural communities, where the National's mission to showcase and partner with communities and artists to bring to life and to create a platform to celebrate traditional arts and culture, and to create visibilities and opportunities for artists and communities that want to engage and support these vibrant expressions that are so important to the foundation of our communities. As part of hosting the National Folk Festival, we seek to find communities that are looking to maintain a folk festival in their community after the National moves on. We typically stay in a community for 3 to 4 years. And then upon our departure, a local festival sprouts up and is stewarded by the local community and begins there to be a way to carry on all the energy, capacity, and vibrancy that comes out at the national festivals. You can see we talk a little bit more about where we've been working recently in Maryland. There are plans for the Maryland Folk Festival for 2023. Our past host partners in North Carolina host the North Carolina Folk Festival. There's the Montana Folk Festival, the Richmond Folk Festival. And somehow I see that the Lowell Folk Festival is not featured on my list here. We've been with the Lowell Folk Festival for over 35 years. It's one of our longest serving legacy festivals. So the point of this is to share that we do carry forward our partnerships with our host cities in different ways, and different festivals have carried on for different times, creating rich capacity and tourism opportunities at the many cities across the country we've worked with. The National Folk Festival is also an opportunity to bring a lot of people to town. The type of programming that is presented at the National connects with so many people in the geographic community in which the National takes root. A first year of a National, depending on weather, depending on many different things related to the creative calendar, may enjoy audience sizes in excess of what we enjoyed at the 78th National Folk Festival in Salisbury, where our first year brought in 61,000 visitors. By year 2, that had clicked up to 153,000 visitors, as people really learned that the rain and them not preparing to make the space on their calendar to attend the National was a mischance. So our second year with our current host city, this would have been 2019, brought in roughly 153,000. We did have that little interruption in 2020. And the 80th National Folk Festival was postponed until 2021. And we were able to safely host approximately 91,000 people at this year's 80th National Folk Festival. This part where I try to share where we are in our planning timeline. As you heard me just explain, that we did have to skip a year in 2020 due to the pandemic, but we did successfully host in 2021, the third in-person year for the National Folk Festival in Salisbury, Maryland. As part of our plans for how to move forward and respond to all the various changes going on, both with our organization, with the communities we partner with, and basically how can we ensure the National has success in 22. We have agreed with our partners at the City of Salisbury, Maryland, to present the 81st National Folk Festival in Salisbury, Maryland. This means that our recruitment cycle for our next host city is looking forward to the 2023, 24, and 25 years. This application cycle has been responding to some significant changes in America, in small cities, in the way in which large events are designed and organized. And as we look for our new host city, we really are prioritizing some aspects of the way in which communities work together so that they can show readiness, interest, and capacity for hosting an event of this size. First off, we'll want to know that there's a commitment to health and safety. Our partners this year were very strong stewards of this, and it became the only way in which we were able to produce our live events in 2021. We would like to be able to see a demonstrated community commitment to the arts events and cultural diversity, that there are people who are already working and engaging at the community level, at various civic organizations, even at the regional and state levels related to these types of opportunities to showcase, connect with, and create vibrant arts experiences within their communities. One of the more interesting factors for capacity for the national is lodging. This is a fairly substantial event, drawing, as you know, as you've heard me say, roughly 150,000 people during its tenure, if not more. And then our internal capacity for crew, artists, staff, vendors at local hotels, that means you're really looking at roughly 700 internal room nights. That's great for pre-planning for your hotel partners to know that there's that number of folks who will be staying in their neighborhood, in addition to those folks who would be traveling in from other areas of the country or even regionally to be able to see the performances. So the region's capacity for lodging is an important one to consider as you're seeing if your community may be a good partner for the national. We also know that the community readiness and flexibility during this uncertain time for event planning will be important. Every community has been coming out of the pandemic and into this new working space that we navigate together with our neighbors and with out-of-town visitors in a different way. And so we would hope that our applicants would speak to how they've already maybe addressed some of these flexibility and resilience and responsiveness to the changing calendars that they maybe have experienced, to commitments. This may even be dealing with philanthropic interests. As we know, events have really changed their stance as the pandemic has opened up and allowed people to start gathering again. We know the economic activity of these events are vital to communities. And we also know it brings forward a lot of questions related to how these events are managed and produced. So on a different note, the National has enjoyed partnerships with the National Park Service over its many years. And that's because of NCTA's longtime partnership with the National Park Service. We have been in partnership for 50 years, and we look to our National Folk Festival host cities as ways for us to experience and engage with new park units. So if your community is affiliated or adjacent to or has relationships with their local National Park Service unit, that is definitely an advantage. It's my chance to speak to that. This cycle is covering the years 2023 to 2025. I think our applicants should take note that 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, called America 250, or the semi-sesquicentennial. So if you remember the bicentennial in 1976, in 2026, there'll be similar, if not more robust celebration of the nation in that year. So you can see whoever we select for this city will be where we will be on year 3 in 2025. And we hope that they would be engaged and involved with some of the activities the following year in 2026 for America 250. A lot of that work will be done through the National Park Service with NCTA. And so that's another reason where the Park Service connection for this cycle would be helpful for applicant cities. We just have to look at the sheer geography of where our national cities have taken place. And our recent folk festival locations have been fairly East Coast bound. So we definitely have an interest in applications that may be coming from west of the Mississippi River or from areas that are geographically distinct from where we are currently hosting or have hosted recently. As there's a lot to go around. It's a big country. And so this is a year where finding our way west of the Mississippi is of interest. Our East Coast listeners, we would love to still consider and talk with you. But it's important to know that we are looking to expand our geography as the recent years have kept us a little more East Coast bound. And application cycle, we would like to see interest by December 1st. That can be done two ways. There is an interest form, which anyone can submit, drawing our attention to the strengths of a particular community. One of my colleagues is going to be entering that link in the chat to the interest forms. And then there's the actual application in which there will be a organization, whether it's a municipality, a nonprofit organization, or some established working organization that would be the partner for our event. The National Folk Festival is driven by its local partner, their capacity, and to be honest, their ability to raise and leverage the funds that are needed for this event. That capacity for funding will come up here in just a moment. But the application should be submitted by the organization that seems most likely to be the contractual agent that would be moving forward with the festival partnership with NCTA. And again, that has been many different types of organizations over the years, and we'd be happy to consult with you if you feel you're getting to application cycle and are curious about who should be the lead applicant. The 501c3 partner is really important for leveraging the charitable donations and other philanthropic aspects of the festival. But over the years, we have seen our partners work very nimbly to engage a combination of community, civic, and then also governmental units to partner and bring forward the event. So when we think about what as you try to sell or share more about the National Folk Festival with other members of your community, as especially looking post-COVID and looking at the various recovery opportunities that are happening throughout the United States as part of the rescue plan, is that we know arts events have an amazing, not only cultural connectivity, but they also are these economic drivers. And so for the 80th National Folk Festival, it just took place a couple short months ago in Salisbury, Maryland. We had 91,000 attendees, which led to 19.8 million in long-term economic impact. You can see we've been working with our local, the Salisbury University's Business, Economic, and Community Outreach Network to run the economic survey and report each year. But we have been able, over the 3 years that the Nationalist has been in the city of Salisbury, to collect data from our visitors, from our retailers, and from other partners to see how this event is affecting the local economy. And we'll just say we have had an effect, and it has been a positive one. That the attention and energy that comes from the 3 days can spur and result into these long-lasting economic opportunities for the city. People coming to town after a city potentially is going through various types of redevelopment or various streetscaping activities and seeing the community in a new light. This parking garage here you see on the right, ahead of the National, it got that wrap put on it, that blue wrap that is the symbol of the downtown Salisbury entertainment area. And just to know you can drive up one day and to see, motivated by the festival, a parking garage transformed so it fits more of the spirit and character that was brought forth by the city. So as you think about applications and capacity, the festival itself operates on a budget between 1.3 and 1.5 million, which I know is very substantial, especially if we're looking to some of the smaller municipalities throughout the country. But for a 7-stage, 3-day free event that's at the caliber and level of quality and performance that we bring, we know that a budget of this size is necessary. So for fundraising capacity between your government, corporate, and community sources, finding roughly $1 million to bring forward to produce the event is what's required. There are opportunities for on-site revenues, which can bring in anywhere from, they're $200,000 to $300,000 from like beer and beverage and merchandise and other types of on-site revenue opportunities. But we have found the biggest bites out of that budget are often coming from a major corporate supporter in your community, or more recently from particular investments from regional, state, and federal government. That those that are working in arts and entertainment should be familiar with some of the various artistic dollars that are available to help communities leverage small, medium, and large entertainment events, because we know that the economic return on these are so strong. And it's funny, I've looked at this picture many times, and I have just recently spotted one of my friends in the picture. So the other really important factor for the National is volunteer support. The contracts that take place, we secure vendors, we secure artists, we secure infrastructure and the bricks and mortar that are required to put on the event. But really, the engine are the volunteers and humans that are there working and engaging with all the various aspects of the festival. And that can be from setup to the Bucket Brigade, which collects donations. There's volunteers who log the songs that are recorded at our various stages that are ultimately go to the Library of Congress. There's people who serve in first aid. There's people who serve in transportation. And so a successful applicant would certainly be able to speak to the readiness and service of their local volunteer group, whether there are a number of people who are working together for these types of large events, and just generally that there's a willingness to the National Folk Festival volunteer service is often not the only thing someone does in town. These are very often very active and civically minded individuals. But that means that there's a way to meet people and sort of share amongst that volunteer community in your local community. This is a picture from our volunteer rally in 2019. Just know this was pre-COVID. Anytime you're seeing the no masks, just know it's pre-COVID. And our turnout for our Salisbury volunteer rallies has continued to be strong, and the volunteer service in that community has been a delight to work with. As communities are looking at this, especially as you might be working with members of your city or community, county leadership, is to know that the National has often leveraged capital investment that helps the performance venues, which are needed for the National, but can be used at different times of year by the host community. In the city of Salisbury, this was the completion and sort of fast tracking of the amphitheater stage, which is located along the Wacomico River. So in this PowerPoint, you're seeing a little inset photo here of the finished river walk and the terraced lawn area and staging area. And then you can see it filled on one of the performances in 2019. But it's not unusual for the National to bring forward this type of capital investment. Right. Another interesting thing with our time in Salisbury was it was part of their downtown redevelopment plan. The 3 years of the National fell smack dab right in the middle of all of their downtown redevelopment. So as you see, I love this picture. This is Howard Blumenthal, who's a noted national journalist. It's Mayor Jake Day and then one of their colleagues walking around during the 2019 festival. And what I love about this picture is actually the marks on the asphalt. The development of the downtown, the repaving after replacement of aging pipes and other rain gardens and other beautification was starting and stopping around the National Folk Festival weekends. So in 2018, the amphitheater opened, the Riverwalk opened. By 2019, a bunch of the downtown redevelopment was going on. But to be able to use the National to help spark and move forward other types of community investments that are underway is quite honestly a part of many of our host cities stories. And there are several venues that we still work on with our legacy festivals that were part of these early capital investments that came with hosting the National. In addition to the broad and diverse array of stage performances that are going on from the finest traditional artists from throughout the country, there's also an opportunity through a regional Folklife Area to support traditional artists and the folk and traditional arts programs through their existing state research and programmatic activities. So the Folklife Area is a way for you to be able to get up close with material culture or crafts artists that are from the region and potentially have been working with their folk and traditional arts program, maybe through master apprenticeship opportunities. It's a way for the themes of the local Folklife Area to be able to engage with some precision the various aspects of traditional regional culture that maybe are less known or are present at most events. This little array of photographs, we've had so many diverse traditions presented through our regional Folklife Areas. We're seeing barbering and coffee making happen to be the two images selected here. But our Folklife Area have highlighted everything from while in North Carolina, the very celebrated pottery traditions. In Maryland, many of the occupational waterman traditions, many different indigenous traditions, the host communities. So the Folklife program is a way for the National to really dive deep with its local community and bring artists from the region who are cultural tradition bearers, the visibility and platform through this event. There is also family area and family activities at the event, and we have found host cities through partnerships are able to sort of muster some of the best hands-on activities and youth engagement opportunities that are happening through community partners already, and helping to leverage those relationships and those audiences into success at the National Folk Festival, which may give a small community group who may have event sizes of 5,000 would be a lot of children, that over the course of the 3-day weekend at the National, the number of attendees and partnership with the community organizations in the Folklife, in the family area are able to add value to the events that happen later in the year and deepen relationships, and a very collegial and sort of sharing of resources has emerged out of these family area activities. Let's see. These events are also bringing together a festival marketplace where state and regional artists are able to sell their wares. The Folklife Area is typically a demonstration space, and then the marketplace is a sales place where through a juried recruitment process based on the capacity and site and various aspects of how arts marketplaces have thrived in the host city, we can develop a marketplace that would be as robust and with variety that reflects the arts scene of the host region. Similarly, the food vendors are pulling on relationships from the food service community, catered catered food trucks and other types of offsite concessions that are popping up at regional fairs or at other large outdoor events of this sort. It's another way for local businesses to engage with the national and sort of use it as a way to springboard and give additional visibility and hopefully economic gain. And we get to enjoy the good food by coming and partaking in the national. So another aspect of the national obviously is our audience. Having the audience size is not even equal to knowing that our intent with marketing, outreach, and engagement is to bring forward the full community spirit, engagement, and presence through the event. That obstacles that may be in place that make participation at some events difficult. In Salisbury, Maryland, there's a large Haitian community. So there was an effort to distribute marketing materials through various community events and engagement that were highlighting one of the most impressive Haitian performing artists, that would be Boukman Experience, that was coming to their town, and to be able to create ways to engage with some of the programmatic decisions that are meant to help engage the diversity of the local community and any obstacles that may be related to language or other site access. So that's important, and that's addressed in many different of the committee structures that the National works through with the host community, is to figure out who's coming to which events and why, and who would be limited from being able to come to this free, did I mention it's free, celebration of the diverse culture of the United States, and to make sure that our audience is as well-rounded as our programming. And just another note on readiness and commitment to safety during the pandemic. You're actually seeing Governor Larry Hogan, who is the governor of Maryland and one of the honorary co-chairs of the National Folk Festival, greeting one of our local business men in Salisbury. And this was making a decision to go live in 2021, went all the way up through our partnerships with the state of Maryland. And so we committed to this idea of being a good neighbor and not knowing what is coming with the pandemic, that there are many ways in which we can contribute to the health and safety of our communities, and on a festival weekend, why it's so important to maintain these guidelines. Since it's a lot of out-of-town people and a lot of people celebrating very closely together with one another. And we know the pandemic has been very limiting on people's social interactions and their physical experiences at events. But we were able to safely navigate that in 2021. And we're prepared to look and work with our new host city for meeting whatever challenges may lie ahead as we go through into 2023. So our application process, we'd like to see interest expressed by December 1st. So that way, as early 22 comes along, we may be able to be narrowing our applicant down, providing and performing visits to the applicant community, and being able to really learn more about these various readiness aspects of the potential host. My colleagues will put the various links in the chat to the resources that are available, especially the application. And I am going to glance at the Q&A. And Sally Vanderwater has asked, is there a specific distance time regarding proximity to a National Park Service unit? So currently in the city of Salisbury, we work with the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park. It's 45 minutes from the festival site. We often use our Park Service partners will then bring their some of their interpretive activities to the festival itself. So 45 minutes is a very drivable distance. Sally, if I think we were trying to be driving more than, an hour and a half from the festival site, it may not feel as intentional of a partnership. But more than likely, those park service units may already have extension work with the community organizations that are covering more of the geography of where they're positioned. So I would hate to have someone not reach out because of the proximity to the park service. We've overcome that obstacle before, but it certainly does help with our readiness related to some of the funding opportunities. And then again, looking ahead to America 250. All right. Megan Cole asks, for hotel capacity, does a community need 700 rooms available at one time, or is that an internal number needed throughout the festival? It's a great question. NCTA, we have broken down our housing grid. And I believe that the Saturday night is the night that's requiring the most rooming nights. And I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to type in the answer, from 2019, our full housing capacity on a single Saturday night. Question is, filling out the interest form enough to express interest, or do we need to fill out the RFP by December 1st? So it's a great question. The interest forms are also helping us learn if multiple people are expressing interest in the same community. And it's kind of a chance to lobby for the city that you want. And you may be in that process telling us and allowing us to connect some dots that maybe even the applicant doesn't have yet. If you have expressed interest through the interest form, we will probably be writing back to you before the deadline to learn if there is someone preparing an application. I think there's last question in the interest form is there anything else we need to know and that you're willing to share? I think being able to know how close we are to someone who would be able to submit application is really the biggest question if just an interest form has come in. So what is the distance max for hotel rooms? Another good question. So in Butte, Montana, they had a limited number of rooming nights within the city of Butte when we were there for what's now the Montana Folk Festival and previously a National Folk Festival host city. So there was a touring bus system that was set up in order to traffic folks from nearby cities. I believe it was, I want to say it was Bosman. So that way, those folks who were sleeping in another community would have reliable transportation. So I think the distance for the rooming nights, I would say again that sort of 40. If you want to leave a festival and go to sleep, and you're able to get there yourselves, having the bulk of lodging nights within that 30-mile radius of the festival is going to be really important. And if not, if there's already some tourism or busing capacity, if these issues have come up in your region, for being able to create a way to get lodgers from the festival site to where their lodging facilities may be. Oh, what are the dates? So the date of the National Folk Festival is determined with the NCTA and the partner community. We have a pretty full dance card with the festivals that are produced already, but so do our cities. Our cities are already putting on Spring Fest and Fall Fest and all sorts of fests. And so we really want to take the moment during the application process to learn when is the most ideal time within the local community to host. There are sheer factors related to weather that certain areas of the country may not choose a particular season. We do know that early spring and very late fall are two prime areas for us to consider with some capacity. We have found that some of our legacy festivals, the most long lasting, are occupying the summer months. But the date of the festival is determined through the application and contracting process with the city. Let's see. Oh, is it possible for two cities to combine on one application? Good question. I would say yes, especially if you, when the city of Salisbury applied to host the national, they had a rooming night capacity question. And so they worked with the Ocean City tourism group to secure some rooming capacity that would be available. That's a 30-mile drive. So the two communities coming together, I think, would need to be solving some of those capacity gaps. There also may be ways in which you have a larger metro area and a smaller community in the outskirts that is basically part of the major metro area, but defined by its own, city ordinance. And there may be a reason for partnership in that type of situation. And what I was explaining about the busing that was going on to help deal with the rooming capacities in the state of Montana, and potentially with the Park Service unit. By all measure, the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park, it's in Cambridge, Maryland. That community, that's a community partnership that brings the event to a nearby area. So it was Jordan who wrote that question. I think there is if it's helping resolve an underlying capacity or partnership problem to meet the goals of what was required in the application, I think you should go ahead and explore both cities. And it may be that one is a lead and one is a support in some way. Okay. Well, this has been a pleasure to share with you the background on hosting the National Folk Festival. It definitely has been a whirlwind as we've made it through our current year of festival programming. And we're very excited to come out in 2022 with all of our partnering festivals ready to produce this year. And we are I'm curious, optimistic, and excited to see which cities come through with these applications. And yes, the recording will be made available. And I assume we will put a link to it on the website that is on my screen currently, which is the ncta-usa.org. And you follow the links to apply to host the National Folk Festival. So thank you everyone for coming. It is very interesting not to be able to talk with you and to talk to a screen. But I do look forward to talking with folks individually, especially if you see that the various components that need to be in place in your city are potentially available to be able to host the National. So thank you, and thank you for tuning in. And you can subscribe to our NCTA newsletter to continue to receive updates about this. And I'll let my colleague add the newsletter sign up link in the chat as well. Thank you very much for attending our webinar. Look forward to seeing your applications and your interest forms.